FX Medicine is your gateway to news, resources and information on the safe, evidence-based approach to practicing complementary and integrative medicine. Visit fxmedicine.com.au to sign up for e-news and stay up to date with the latest research, podcasts and industry information. This is FX Medicine. I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. Joining me on the line today, all the way from Adelaide, South Australia, is Jessica Donovan, a mama of two, naturopath and holistic health expert who helps families to thrive. She's passionate about educating parents on nourishing their children with real food. Now there's a concept. Helping to boost their health and to heal naturally. Jessica combines her extensive naturopathic knowledge with a realistic, empathetic and inspiring, down-to-earth approach to empower women to look after themselves and take charge of the well-being of their families. She also helped other practitioners, and this is really interesting, to get their businesses online by supporting them to get clear on their message, build their online audience, create online programs and launch them out into the world, which you have done very successfully, I do understand. Jessica, welcome to FX Medicine.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, first, let's go back. What's your background? How did you get into natural medicine?
Yeah, so I got into naturopathy fairly young, actually. I finished high school and I always knew I wanted to do something in the health field. You know, I looked at physio and I looked at speech pathology and I looked at nutrition. And I decided to have a year off after I finished high school and ended up working in a cafe with a girl who was studying to be a naturopath. And so her talking about what she was doing really, it seemed to kind of combine all of the things that I was interested in. You know, you got to learn about nutrition and you got to learn about anatomy and physiology and you got to learn about, like massage and sort of physical therapy. So it was in that year that I decided to take the plunge and study to be a naturopath. So I graduated in 2000, so 17 years ago. And since being qualified, I've sort of worked in lots of different clinics, sort of all around the world. I went traveling after I graduated and landed some really great jobs in London and other parts of the UK and Canada. So that was some really great work experience. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've got to ask, it just seems to me over the airwaves that you've always been a foodie. Was that your household growing up? Were your parents this way inclined?
Yeah, look, my mum's a real cook, but, you know, we definitely grew up on quite a bit of processed food as well. I remember, you know, my mum's shopping day, she would bring home, you know, the big 12 packs of crisps or chips and chocolate bars and so we had a fair bit of processed food growing up, only because I don't think my mum really knew any better. So she was into food. She was always in the kitchen. She was always cooking up something, but sort of, I guess, not probably to the standard that I cook today. And even that she cooks today, she's really changed her ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's good. And what about your dad? Like what was his, as a father, looking out for his daughter, you know, going out into the world and exploring a career and things like that? What was his opinion when you said, I'm going to be a naturopath?
Yeah, they were both quite supportive, but they were also a little bit, they didn't even really know what a naturopath was. And back then it was a little college that I studied at. It wasn't a university. And I had gotten into university to do a science degree. So they were a little bit skeptical. You know, I had to sort of talk them into it a bit because I had to borrow some money off them to enroll in my program. But on the whole, you know, they wanted me to do what I was passionate about.
So have you paid your mum back by cooking classes?
Exactly.
Now, I have to ask, you've very successfully moved your naturopathic business onto an online space. What was your motivation for doing this? I mean, that's a big thing to do, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess it is. I've always been interested in the business side of running a clinic, and I had this, this little tweak of interest in online business and online marketing. I think it just really appealed to me because it felt like the opportunity there was huge, almost limitless. The big motivation for me moving online was to be able to reach more people than I could in my clinic alone. Because when you have an online business, you can change people's lives that live on the other side of the world by, them reading your blog or doing an online or one of your online programs. And that is what I'm doing now, which is really exciting. And I guess personally, from a personal perspective, I wanted more freedom in my own life. I've got 2 children, and I like to sort of have a balanced life. We like to travel. So being in a clinic room 5 days a week seeing clients wasn't really it didn't really appeal to me. So, yeah, they were the main motivators for getting my business online.
You remind me so much of Tammy Guest, I've got to say. I don't know if you know her, but she's
I do know of her. I've never met her. I've seen her around online, but I've seen her stuff. She does some amazing things.
Oh, she's going to be flying a helicopter around the world.
I know. I think I heard her talking about that on another podcast.
It's just amazing. Yeah, amazing stuff. You two have got to hook up. But I love that. I love what you were talking about with regards to freedom, because so many people feel shackled. Indeed, I remember talking to another practitioner that sort of mentors naturopaths with their clinic life, and Keone Moore is her name, and she locked the clinic one night in tears, shattered to her core. She was not going to come back the next day. Gone, done.
Wow.
And something happened. It was something happened that night for her to come back the next day. And it's a big story to listen to on another podcast that we've done with Keone. But I think the interesting thing is that to have that freedom, but I have to play this sort of devil's advocate with you. How do you cope with this sort of, the ethical consideration of consulting with a patient, seeing what they're like in front of you, the spark of their eye, if they got a limp, what are their clothes like? Are they looking after themselves? How do you balance that with having an online business?
Yeah, and that is such a good question. So it's really a whole different approach that you have to take online. What I mainly do online is like online group programs. So I have a healthy kids program called Natural Super Kids. So it's teaching parents how to look after their kids' health. And so we're not looking at each person individually in that sort of situation. It's really I'm sure naturopaths and practitioners listening know that information that they tend to repeat over and over in clinic, to one client and then the next client and then the next client. There's those common themes that we educate our clients about, and that's really the information, the content that translates really well into an online program or an ebook. So it's not necessarily, the one-on-one work that I'm doing too much of online. It's more the base education, which can make a really big difference in people's lives.
Oh, hell yeah. And look, you just tweaked something in my brain. We need your sort of e-books and things like that in schools, because my wife is a teacher aide, and the heartbreaking stories that she brings home to me, inevitably, and it's not just the lower socioeconomic kids, by the way, kids who come to school with horrible junk food. I get the place for junk food. I get it. But as a staple nutrition type main meal of the day, lunch.
Yeah.
They don't have anything. They have packets of chips and twisties. And so how do you reach that audience?
Yeah, well, it is really frustrating. I agree. I mean, at my kids' school, we've got a no packet policy, but it's not, really well policed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least they're encouraging kids or parents to pack, lunch boxes that aren't full of packets. So it gets people thinking. So, yeah, it's a tricky one how to reach that audience. I think my hurdle when it comes to working with schools is, my advice doesn't necessarily go with the traffic light system advice that the dietitians and government agencies recommend for kids. So I haven't actually been down that route, but the people that you can reach online is just really amazing. I mean, with Facebook ads, you can target specific people. I can target mums with kids in a certain age bracket who like a certain other Facebook page. So it's pretty amazing what you can do with online marketing in terms of targeting your ideal audience.
Right. I love what you're doing, rather than this insidious organing about I'm going to try and sidestep any legal litigation here from, let's say a smiley meal. Let's say that. Mm-hmm. It's a smiley meal.
Smiley meal.
A smiley meal from a rather large Scottish name family restaurant. To at least doing some good by targeted advertising, at least like really doing some base good for these kids, because we've got great information from, esteemed researchers like Professor Felice Jacka about how important it is for growing kids to have good food in their tummies so that they can actually think, indeed so that they can actually be happy. So it's so important what you're doing. And
and look, I really try and have a realistic approach for mums, because I think, mums are overwhelmed.
Yeah,
there's so much information out there, and they feel like, some of these more, I guess, strict or extreme, or what people might think are extreme ways of eating, like, feeling like they have to go completely paleo or follow the GAPS approach, which, it can be really beneficial for a lot of families, but a lot of families just find that all too much. So I try and be that person that's realistic and just really starting from where you are and building on that, because I think any extra nourishment we can get into our kids is going to be beneficial in the long run.
Absolutely. So I've got to ask you, as a mama of two, how do you cope with the fussy eater stage, the I'm not eating that? I've seen this with my kids, and particularly my younger. He was a shocker. And his determination, I dip my hat to you, Liam, his dogged determination. One month, he just said enough, by himself, and he totally changed his diet around.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. But how do you do this? How do you cope with that fussy time of life?
Yeah, this is a question. That's probably the biggest question that I get asked, actually, and the biggest challenge that parents have is the fussiness of their kids, and some can be, shocking. They won't eat any fruits or any vegetables. So, it's a big picture approach, and I think it's really that there's lots of different things. Coming down to the basics of making sure there's plenty of fresh whole foods stocked in the kitchen that they have access to, and sitting down and eating as a family. The big thing that I see so much more these days, parents are working longer hours, kids have really busy schedules. So, the kids are sitting down and eating early, and the parents are sitting down and eating later. And that sets up kind of a mum or dad serving the kids something that they know they'll like.
Yep.
So it really starts to narrow the repertoire of foods that they eat. Whereas if you sit down as a family, I talk about the one meal for a family approach. So not cooking 2, 3, 4 different meals to suit everybody.
Whoops.
This is what we're having for dinner. But also remaining neutral, not forcing them to eat it. This is what there is. There's nothing else,
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to eat it, but, you're not going to have a bowl of cereal to fill up your tummy afterwards if you don't eat this. So, that sort of thing. And as a starting point, I talk to parents about, adding nutrition to foods that kids already like. So if they love pancakes, how about, putting some chia seeds and fresh blueberries and maybe changing the flour to a buckwheat flour.
Yeah.
That might happen slowly, but looking at what your child already likes and already accepts and making small changes from there can be a really good place to start.
Yeah. I've got to say, one of the key things that I have been exposed to, growing up in Orange and New South Wales and having access to a sort of country lifestyle, if you like. Not that we lived on a farm, but my sister has a call it a potty farm, where she has this incredible veggie garden. And I remember taking our kids down there when they were younger, and we gorged ourselves on her fresh veggie garden. They didn't get to the table. And I remember as a kid, even in Canberra, growing radishes. Me. Like, this is a kid, and I used to eat radishes, get them out of the ground, rub the dirt off, and munch on them. Now, okay. And eat them. And I'm weird. I know, I'm weird. Probably explains a lot about me today. But beans, peas, never made it to the table. We'd eat them. What I love about some of the schools, particularly like, for instance, what they're doing in Queensland and I've heard about some other areas, is that they actually have a produce area at the school.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
So important, because they learn that connection. Where does this vegetable come from?
Yeah, exactly. And that's another big thing with fussy eaters, getting them involved somehow in the food journey, whether it's growing food or whether it's helping you pick food at the market or the supermarket or,
yes.
helping to cook. And I know as busy parents it can be a bit, it takes longer if kids are involved, but equipping them with those skills is really important. And also, kids are often much more likely to eat something that they've prepared or grown, like you're talking about with the radishes. My kids will pick parsley, out of the garden and eat it. But if I put a pile of parsley on their plate, they wouldn't eat it.
Oh, really? I like your point about getting them involved in the shopping, because our boys have always helped my wife out with this. And, like, for instance, I've got a photo. Indeed, I took this the other day and sent it to my wife. I just said, there's Liam shopping. And there's Liam picking his own fruit. And giving me advice, by the way, and saying, hey, listen, Dad, can you buy these oranges rather than those ones, because those ones are really stringy? It was a cracker. It was a cracker. I loved it. But I think it's really important if you obviously there's the challenges of distraction, where you've got the enormous amount of, impulse marketing for the lollies and the fast food there. But if you can get them to go around the outside of most supermarkets and certainly start in the veggie section, get them to help you. This is what it is. I need some carrots. Look at the carrots. So this is the different carrots. We need the baby carrots, or, to teach them some differential. Is that what you found useful, though, practically?
Yeah, definitely. And, it empowers them as well. Okay. And, they can maybe choose a fruit or a vegetable or a couple of fruits or vegetables for the week that they might want packed in their lunchbox, or they might want to make a meal out of. So I think it's really important. And kids like that, they like to feel empowered. They like to feel like they're having a say, as opposed to mum putting a plate of food in front of them and, telling them to make sure they eat it all.
Yeah. Now, I've got to ask this question, though. You're a foodie. You love what you do. That would inspire others. What about when you get the normal poor diet, processed food, everything's in a packet? That's how they've lived. Mum and dad, dear now they say they want to change. That's a hard struggle even for the parent to do that. How do you find that works? How well do you find that works when you offer them these things?
Yeah, so it needs to be a slow process, and I've learned that personally. Just recently, we've just come back from a big 13-month trip around Australia, and we went to some remote areas where we couldn't get access to the good whole food diet that we normally have.
Yeah.
And so, I bought a box of breakfast cereal, and we had to buy, more processed and refined crackers and things like that my kids really hadn't had much of in the past. And, we had to have those foods. We were up in the north of Western Australia in the Kimberley, and we were out there for 3 weeks. So we just couldn't get access to fresh food. And then coming back into civilization again, and trying to get my kids back onto the nut and seed muesli that we would normally have for breakfast, they were not loving it.
Oh, really? That quickly?
So,
that's interesting.
that quickly. Their taste changed so quickly. So what I did is, it was actually a good little experiment for me, because this is the sort of thing that I encourage other parents to do. But my kids, I'm a naturopath. My kids have always had this sort of healthy food, so I haven't had to transition them. But so what I would do is just slowly make the transition. So, we had some sultana bran, I think it was. So we started adding the nut and seed muesli to the sultana bran and slowly sort of crowding it out. So that's what I generally recommend is start making changes slowly and see how your children respond.
Yeah. That's a really good example, though, that, they went from a healthy diet to a poor diet out of necessity, and you had that. You actually had to had to walk your talk.
Yeah, which is always a good thing to do as a practitioner, actually live it. Because giving the advice is one thing, but actually seeing what it is like is another, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned that, a couple of times now, you spent 13 months going around Australia. How did that impact your clinic? Your bricks and mortar clinic, how did you have this drop off of patients suddenly when you left and you said bye for now, or did you warn patients? How did you implement that?
So it was planned. It was planned sort of 10 months in advance, and me having the online business was really the thing that enabled us to be able to do it, because I could work from anywhere. And I didn't have to be tied to my clinic. But I did have my clients. I was working 2 days a week in my clinic, and that was a really hard decision to make. But because we decided, far in advance, I just stopped taking new clients, sort of 3 months before we left. And I just told all my clients that I was going away for a year. I referred them to a local naturopath that I trust and I like her approach. So I gave them her, details to be able to see her if they needed to. I also gave them the choice to be able to do Skype consults with me, but I do live blood analysis in clinic, so, obviously that can't be done over Skype, and I didn't want to be doing too much of that while we were travelling either. So I would do the odd Skype consult with people while I was travelling, and so we've only been back for 4 weeks, settling back in. So I'm about to start back in clinic just 1 day a week, because I do miss that one-on-one clinic work, but I will only just be doing 1 day a week, because that's really all I can do in terms of balancing it with everything else I'm doing online.
I remember talking to Lise Alschler, a lady who's very dear to my heart. She specialises in supporting patients through their cancer journey, and she does much of her clinical life as Skype consults, and she says, I love it. I do an initial consult, but I love Skype consults, because I say, great, we're on Skype and you're on camera. Take me to your larder.
That's a good idea.
And she says, I love it, because I can see exactly what they're eating. There's no hiding. Open your fridge door and point the computer in there.
Oh, that's great. I love it. I'll have to try that one.
Yeah, I thought it was a cracker.
Yeah, and look, with the technology these days, you can actually see people. It's not the same as face to face, But, you can see people on Skype and you can have a conversation. So it's almost like they're in the room with you.
Yeah. So if you're going to be teaching other practitioners about how to develop a passive income, I know that you talk about the myth of passive income, because passive income is something that's going ka-ching, ka-ching in the background while you're doing what you love.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a practitioner, how do you do that?
Yeah, so I like to kind of dispel, the passive income is really what drew me to online business, because I thought, wow, that sounds good. I can be making money while I sleep or while I, lay on the beach or whatever. But I soon found that there was nothing passive about it. I mean, the great thing with online business is you can, you develop these programs or write a book and format it into an ebook, and, that you can use them over and over. And really there's no limit in the amount of people you can enroll in an online program, depending on what sort of support that you're offering with that. But the thing is that you always want to upgrade things. You always want to redo certain parts of it, because of the latest research that's come out or something new that you've learned. And there's always the marketing and the selling side of it, which doesn't just happen on its own. So I really do think that passive income is a myth. There's, an example of, fairly passive income that I make is through affiliate links. So now that I've got a decent sort of audience and following, I can put links on my resources page, as an example, on my website, just to different ebooks or different programs that I recommend. And if someone clicks through on those and buys, then I make a commission. So that's fairly passive, and that's a nice little bonus at the end of the month. Or I'm an affiliate for some other programs that sort of do live launches that I believe complement my program. So, and those sorts of programs offer really good affiliate commissions. You can earn up to sort of 50% of what they're selling them for. That sort of income is fairly passive, although you still have to tell your audience about it. But I think it's really important for practitioners to know that online business isn't necessarily passive, but it can be quite exciting when I remember the first time I launched my Natural Super Kids program, and I spent all this time working on it and developing it. And then I went off to my son's footy carnival, and we were there all day. And my phone was chinging with income coming in from PayPal from these programs that I was selling. So yeah.
Can I just say something? I feel so stupid. With regards to social media and the power of, you hear about, oh, Charlie, that hurt my finger. The old famous YouTube thing of the kid who bit his brother's finger, and their kids are millionaires now. But you don't think that there's you don't really think that that there's a practical way for everybody to do this. I mean, this is really exciting stuff, and you do it ethically. You do it by helping people live happier, healthier lives, eating better food. So it's not like you're selling a, horrible processed food or something over the internet that's going to degrade their health. So I really applaud you. I really do. This is awesome stuff. So
Thank you.
You teach practitioners how to do this stuff just like you did.
I do a bit of that on the side, and that really came from practitioners, contacting me and saying, "Oh, I would love to put a program together. Where do I start?" And I've spent 4 years now learning this stuff. I've really dived into all kinds of different trainings and that sort of thing on online business, because there's a lot to consider and there's a lot to keep up with, and it's really important that you get crystal clear on what your message is going to be. You can't just sort of we talk about this as practitioners in clinic. It's really good to have a specialty, but when you're online, that becomes even more important, because if you just put out a general get healthy with a naturopath program, really not many people are going to buy it. It needs to solve a very specific challenge that people are having. So that's kind of where I start with practitioners, trying to really help them get clear on their message, but then also everything around that, developing their programs or ebooks, and then how to market them, how to build their following, build their email list, build their social media following. There's so many different parts to the puzzle that it can be really helpful having someone to sort of guide you through that.
I feel so stupid. I seriously, I got to say, my colleague, I call her my sister because she basically, very dear to my heart, but she basically tries to organise me, fails dismally, and that's Rebecca Gill. She's learnt so much about social media and what it can do and how to work it and things like that. You're just compounding this knowledge about how it can work for you. I've got to ask, though, what sort of lifestyle has this generated for you? And I'm going to ask this, I'm going to be a little bit blunt, forgive me, I don't want to pry, but I've heard stories before about, this naturopath's overseas. Why? Their husband's a pilot. So what's it done for you? As in, has this been financially successful in its own right?
Yeah, look, it has. And we made the decision early on when I wanted to go down the online route, and I was doing 2 days in clinic, it was full on, and I was doing it, all on my own. I didn't have an admin assistant or a receptionist, so I was doing my supplement ordering and, all of those pieces of the puzzle. So it was all too much with kids. So my husband actually stepped down his work commitments, which he was quite happy to do at the time, to take on more of the, the running of the household and the kids. And so he went down to part-time. So I
Hats
could kind
off
of
to him.
pursue this. Yeah, I know. Amazing, hey?
Hats off to him.
So I have always been able to, been able to support the family with what I'm doing. It's allowed us, like I said, to go on our big adventure around Australia. Without the online income coming in, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And now I feel like I've gotten up to a point. There's still busy times. I'm in a launch right now so launch time. Talk to any online business person is really crazy. So I'm putting in some big hours at the moment, but then it comes in waves. Once my launch is done, it'll all settle down again. So you've definitely got to be ready for putting, some hard work in and getting the hours up. Yeah. But it definitely, it's always paid off for me. And I've always had the approach to not over-invest. Like I didn't get a $20,000 website built, right from the start at all. I still don't have a $20,000 website. But I did things. I did a lot of stuff on my own. I did my own videos for my programs, and I've slowly upgraded things as the income comes in. So I haven't, we haven't invested a lot of our own money. I have invested a lot of my own time though. And the thing with online business is you have to invest all this time to put out free content to then get people to be interested in buying your program. So it's a little bit of a risk, which is why I think it's important to just start slowly and sort of test the waters, so to speak, see what your audience wants from you, see what sort of, what challenges they're having, really have that really open communication with them. And go from there, because if you put something out that you think people need, it might not necessarily be something that people are going to click on the buy now button for.
Yeah. What you are doing this low cost, time effective way of generating income, it just smacks of what James Maskell talks about with talking about, I think, micro clinics, I think he calls them, basically not small, but low cost, start low. You don't have to have this, as you call it, a $20,000 website if you can build your own for free.
Yeah.
And start somewhere. But I've got to ask, what would you say not to do?
Yeah, so I would say not to do it all alone. I think you definitely need to invest in some help, and whether that's like a mentor or a coach to help guide you through the process. Or I recently told a naturopath client that's building her business. She was working on her own website, but it was taking her months. So you don't necessarily have to spend big bucks, but get someone to, spend a few $1,000s and get it off your plate and get someone else to do that while you work on the content of the program that you're going to sell, as an example. So, as experts,
yep.
In terms of us being practitioners, we need to be focusing on our area of expertise, not spending hours trying to get our head around how to set up a Facebook ad, as an example. I think it's, and I've made the mistake of doing a lot of that myself. But I think it's important to get help if things are sort of holding you back, and not to feel like everything has to be perfect before you launch it out into the world. The first program that I launched, which was my Natural Super Kids program, I hadn't even built the whole program yet. I hadn't even created the whole program yet. I knew what the outline was, and I, got a sales page up, and I sold the program. And then I had the first 2 weeks created, and then I created as I went, just because I knew that it was just going to take me too long. If I had that deadline of, week 3 is coming up and I need to get the content out there, I just work better under a bit of pressure.
Oh, it's well done. Look, yeah. I fall into that. I know I do. The fear of failure.
Well, and knowing something has to get done, you just get it done, don't you?
So did you have that fear of failure, and how did you overcome it? What was your mind talk?
I've definitely had, those. I think every time I launch, still I have that fear of, what if no one buys? It's pretty scary because you've put all that work in to do it in the first place. So I think just being positive, the self-care stuff really helps. Like, I really make sure that I step that up when I'm putting myself out there in a launch, because you really do have to put yourself out there. And, there's all that fear of, well, am I really good enough, or what will people think, or what if I fail? So, I'm big on making sure that I do sort of 10 minutes of meditation, at least a 20 to 30 minute walk on the beach. That sort of thing really helps to sort of clear your mind, and also surrounding yourself with supportive people that are, that will sort of cheer you along.
Yeah, it's nourishment doesn't just come from food; it comes from interactions with nature, people as well.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point.
So practitioners can get support that you offer. Now, energeticmama.com/practitioners. We'll put that up on the FX Medicine website, definitely. I've got one last question for you before we leave for the day, Jessica, and that is, while you were travelling around enjoying these incredible sights of an ancient land, how much time did you have to say, I'm sorry, honey, kids, I'm sorry, I can't enjoy the horizontal waterfall just now because I have to attend to my online business? How much did you have to spend while you were doing this?
Yeah, look, not too much at all. I did it in chunks of time. So I would, I probably had probably about seven or 8 months off. Off of work. Saying off, I still kept up with my social media posts, and fairly regular emails out to my list, but not a lot of work during that time. And then we would stop, and it would be work time for 4 or 6 weeks. So while I sort of launched a program and ran the program as well. So I didn't feel like I missed out on a lot. I definitely didn't miss out on any of the highlights, and it was kind of a nice excuse to have a bit of a break from the family.
So you travelled around Australia. You stopped at a place hundreds of miles from your bricks and mortar home, and you launched a program that created business for you.
Yes, I did. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Wow.
And there was the issue of internet, so you couldn't, the internet in some places in Australia is pretty atrocious. So that was a bit of a challenge. But yeah, that's exactly what I did.
That's incredible. You are incredible.
Thank you.
Jessica, it's been an absolute pleasure listening and learning from you. Indeed, not just around the great food ideas, about how we can improve kids' nutrition in schools, please, everybody, but also how practitioners can develop an ethical passive income, dare I say that thing that you don't like, but it seems to be this sort of passive income, or at least an active income, while they're doing what they love, so they can have a perfect work-life balance. I really applaud you. This is brilliantly done.
Thank you. It's been really nice to chat and share my story.
Look forward to meeting you someday when you're on another trip.
Thank you. Bye.
This is FX Medicine. I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. If you're loving our FX Medicine podcasts, please don't forget to share us with your colleagues, family, and friends. This is Andrew from FX Medicine. We thank you so much for your support over the last 2 years. We'd really love to remain clinically relevant to your practice. So if you know of an expert in some area, please let us know. You can contact us on fxmedicine.com.au, Facebook or Twitter.